on them, and His blessing goes through plastic and everything like that. All right? It all works. I want to start out by apologizing to all lawyers who might be here in the arena because I'm going to tell a lawyer joke. A minister and attorney were riding together, and the clergyman asked, "Sir, do you ever make mistakes while in court?" Very rarely, the lawyer answered bluntly, but on occasion I must admit that I do. "And when you do make a mistake, what do you do?" the minister asked. The attorney responded, "Why, if they're large mistakes, I mend them. If they're small, I let them go." "Tell me, Reverend, don't you ever make mistakes while preaching?" "Of course," answered the preacher, "and I dispose of them the same way you do. In fact, not long ago, I meant to tell the congregation the devil is the father of liars, but I made a mistake and said he was the father of lawyers." But the mistake was so small, I just let it go. All right. That's why I apologize to lawyers ahead of time. My dear friends, as I think is becoming clear from Father's wonderful explanation of the Church's social teaching, that the one and only solution to all human problems is the power of Christ's love. Father began with Matthew 25 and reiterated several times the teaching on the least of Christ's brethren. And this love is played out in millions of ways, not only in things like the pro-life movement or the social works of the Church, but in the many, many ways that you and I on a daily basis try to be charitable and loving towards our neighbor. And we have to admit, Catholics have been absolutely and utterly exemplary in these works of love and charity throughout the ages. We will always be, and everywhere that the Catholic Church exists, we will always have people to proclaim these great works. Years ago, I went to the country of Thailand. It has 0.5% of its population as Catholics, but the Catholics were all the ones running the pro-life movement that existed there. The Diocese of Bangkok had 27 Catholic healthcare institutions and 400 Catholic schools. You know, for such a small percentage of the population, we're doing marvelous works every single place in the world. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you, because you have made many sacrifices for your children, your families, for others, and you will never be thanked by them oftentimes. You will oftentimes make those sacrifices in a spirit of heroism, but only God will see them. And I tell you that God will always see them, and God will always reward you for them. Your children may not reward you or thank you, but God always will. So please remember that. As Catholics, we must be unafraid to make even heroic sacrifices for our brothers and sisters and those most in need. But in order to do that, we must remain close to Christ. We must remain close to the Church and united with one another. Never forget either the power of prayer. The greatest work of charity I think that we can do for others is our prayer. I want to tell you a story of one of my favorite pro-life people, is Reverend Johnny Hunter, who's a Baptist preacher in North Carolina. Pastor Hunter told me the story of going with his parishioners to an abortion clinic in Buffalo, New York in the early 90s. And he and his parishioners were there praying up a storm, and they all knelt down, and they did private prayer, silent prayer right there, but they knew that they had the power of prayer behind them. When they were kneeling down in silence, 24 women went by them into the abortion clinic, and nobody said anything. Furthermore, the abortionist drove up, he stopped his car at the threshold, and he got out and he started to revile the Christians and tell them how evil they were and that their prayers would never have any effect and they were going to go to abortions no matter what the Christians thought, etc., etc. Well, God will not be mocked, because while those 24 women were inside the abortion clinic, one of them started to cry, and she yelled out as she held her midsection where her baby was, saying, "I can't have this abortion, I'm going to keep my baby." And then another woman right next to her started to shed a tear, and she started to cry in the same way and say, "I can't have this abortion either, I'm going to keep my baby." And there was like a domino effect. Went right down the line. 24 women that day kept their babies. diocese, there were 19 facilities of Planned Parenthood, and he went out with his people, and he prayed in front of each one of them. They went from 19 to 1 in the space of a couple of years. The gates of hell shall not prevail. Now, for his final talk of the day, Father's going to finish enlightening us about the Church's social teaching, the power of that teaching for our society. And I would like you to welcome once again the 4-star general of the new evangelization, Father John Corapi.
That's his detective right there next to him.
Thank you very much. Well, we come to the final presentation in this 4-part presentation on the Catholic Church's doctrine of social teaching. I think this is where it converges. At least that's what I'm going to try to do, put it all together for you. And this final presentation is I don't know if it's the most important element in the series, but it might be the most timely, the most relevant. It's on our minds. We're going to talk about the economic component of the Church's social teaching and socialism. Socialism and the social teaching of the Catholic Church. Socialism has been defined many different ways, but let me read you one definition. A system of social and economic organization that would substitute state monopoly for private ownership of the sources of production and the means of distribution, and would concentrate under the control of the secular governing authority the chief activities of human life. Now, some might say, well, that hasn't happened. No. But it won't happen all at once. You have to be vigilant. You don't want to wake up one morning and find out that your way of life is evaporated. That's not the legacy you want to hand on to your children and your grandchildren. Now, I'm kind of like you. In recent months and years, I've had lots of conversations with people, friends, and so forth, and I find myself, and I hate to say it, but I have frequently said, and I never thought I would say it, you know, I'm glad I'm older rather than younger. You know what I mean, I think, when I said that. And I'm sorry to say that, actually. That's not a pleasant thing. I do not believe at this juncture in time, although we can always change the course of history, but at this juncture of time, I do not believe that our children and grandchildren will have the same opportunities that we have in the United States of America and in the Western world in general. Governments, societies, and systems rise and fall. The crowns are exalted one day and they roll in the dust the next day. To the degree that we act in accordance with our true nature, we prosper. To the degree that we do not act in accordance with the dignity of our human nature, well, predictable results